I did it, guys. I become the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and I have some thoughts. I kinda hate how little I've talked about Zelda on this channel. At one point in time, it was by far my favorite series. And somehow I only have one Zelda video. Finally, Nintendo has released Tears of the Kingdom, giving me a good reason to correct the lack of Zelda on this channel. Starting off, I feel like I have to address the $70 DLC elephant in the room and ask, did they change enough for this game? Yes. I've shared my fears about the map in this game a lot. It being the same map, I was worried if they were going to change enough, or add a fun new movement option for me to not care. Well, they more than doubled the size of the map and added an amazing way to get around. Those fears were killed very quickly. Even then, the story had me taking different routes than Breath of the Wild, leading to some older sections feeling a little fresh. To be fair, it has been a solid 4 years since I last played Breath of the Wild. It's possible you wouldn't feel the same if you played the game recently. So the one thing that could have been a negative for me is non-existent. What about the good? Much like with Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom is amazing at teaching you how things work. Unless you're dark side Phil.
You're kidding me! Riding full speed, the lightning hones in on you and it hits you?
Even if a puzzle is easy, it's still amazing game design. Teaching the player is the only thing this game does just as good as Breath of the Wild, because it surpasses it in every other aspect. The sandbox here is the best I've ever seen in a video game. You can attach any interactable objects to each other with the new Ultra Hand ability. It's basically the magnet from Breath of the Wild, but better in every way. This leads to a lot of very creative solutions for puzzles. More impressively, some people have gone absolutely off the rails in making things. It's why I think it's the best sandbox ever. Something like Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts may have more parts, but this game limiting the player in the ways that it does leads to a lot of creativity. It's funny that I compare Nuts and Bolts mission design to Breath of the Wild, and then Tears of the Kingdom was compared to it. Once again, they made such an amazing sandbox that there really isn't an incorrect way to solve a puzzle. There's just intended and less intended ways. The other new abilities are great. Recall allows things to be rewound. I personally found it way more interesting than Stasis. Fuse allows you to, well, fuse just about everything to your weapons or shields. There were so many times where I looked at an object, got an idea for something dumb, and it worked. Ascend, I kept forgetting I had at the start of the game. Not because it's bad. It's actually very good. Having the ability to go through any ceiling to its roof is very unique. I kept forgetting about it because it's such an out there ability. I fell down a well once and didn't know how to get out until I remembered Ascend exists. Auto build is super useful. It auto builds things you've made before or have blueprints for. It can save a lot of time. It was very helpful because my cars kept despawning when I parked them in front of caves. Speaking of, how did Breath of the Wild not have caves in this form? Both those and wells add so much to the world. It's kind of crazy how many of them are scattered all over the place. They made exploration way better. Adding more nooks and crannies to a map that already had so many is always a good thing. And that's not even the best part of the exploration. It's the new levels to the map that they added. Yeah, the sky is pretty cool. It's super fun flying from island to island, and diving back down to the surface is a blast. But where it gets really good is when you go past the surface and dive down into the depths. That whole experience gave me chills every single time. I had a feeling there was going to be some kind of underworld based off of the trailers, but I was expecting like another world, not a dark cavern. It's dark, it's dangerous. I loved every second I spent down there. It's a personal highlight of the game for me. Much like its predecessor, a lot of great moments happened through its sandbox just doing its thing. I have many very funny clips saved on my Switch, but I think one of the best things that this game does is how it sets up expectations and then surpasses them. The best example I can think of is when I first saw Death Mountain after discovering the depths. I was hoping that the center of it was an entrance, and when I jumped through there, it did not disappoint. There were so many times when I thought, wait, is the game actually going to do this? And I would pop off when it was better than I expected. The story, the weakest part of the previous game, was way better here. It kind of helps that this game doesn't tell you to go kill the final boss immediately like with Breath of the Wild. There's clearly an intended order to do everything in this game, but it lets you do all of it at your own pace. While I do wish there were more story moments that happened during the game instead of through flashbacks, I do believe this is a really good middle ground between story and fully open world game design. Especially because if you do everything in the intended order, I think the story might be fairly linear. While I was playing it, there were so many times where I just said to myself, oh, this is one of the greatest games ever made. How I feel about The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom reminded me how I felt towards Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Both games met very high expectations that they set up for me, and in many cases, surpasses them. And if you've been on this channel, you know how I feel about Xeno 3, so you have an idea where the score is going. It's literally Breath of the Wild, but better. So much better, I don't know if I will ever go back. Why would I ever go back to that sandbox when I can fuse an explosive barrel to my shield and bonk an enemy with it? It's truly amazing that they topped Breath of the Wild in such an impressive way. If I had a channel back in 2017, I would have given Breath of the Wild a 10 out of 10. Naturally, Tears of the Kingdom being better than Breath of the Wild in almost every single way, of course it's going to be getting my second 10 out of 10 on this channel. In 2017, this studio made what I would call the best designed game of all time. It had that throne for 6 years until they casually did it again, making this the new best designed game of all time. I would use the actual case because that illustrates the point a bit more, but that's in a box in my basement, and I'm not trying to find it for this bit. Do you agree? Think I'm an idiot? Comment down below. Dislike the video if you know where the stand for my Switch went. I think I put it in my dock while it wasn't all the way in, and it just flew right off and I didn't notice. I haven't seen it for like a month. And subscribe for more bad content. Follow me on other platforms if you want. Take care, guys.